Hello, welcome back to our channel, and this is a channel where we give you reviews, playthroughs, unboxings. We generally like to talk a load of bollocks about tabletop gaming in general, and in this video we're going to be talking about an area control game that's recently had a quite nice reprint. We're going to be talking about Tammany Hall, and this is a game where you'll be trying to take control of different regions by influencing immigrants. You'll be taking part in elections whilst trying to slander your opponents to get victory points that will allow you to win the game. So in this video we're going to be giving you a very brief overview of the rules. We'll be telling you what we do like, what we don't like. Then we'll come back and we will tell you whether or not Tammany Hall is still worth playing quite a few years after it was first released. So remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment in that section down below, and we'll see you after this. Bollocks! So, Tammany Hall, how'd you play this game? So first thing you're going to do when you're setting this game up is you're going to stick the board out in the middle of the table, funny old thing, and then what you do, you're going to populate the different zones with a certain number of immigrants. Right, zone 1 is going to have 2 Irish immigrants, it's going to have 2 English immigrants, and it's going to have 2 German immigrants, and zone 2 and zone 3 are going to have the same type of people stuffed in there, but they're going to have less of them, right? And these are going to be used to populate the different zones on the board, different points in the game. You notice there's 3 different zones on the board. You're going to start by trying to influence zone 1, and then later on in the game, zone 2 will open up, and then zone 3 will open up at different points. And the point in the game that this happens depends on how many people you got playing the game. So each player is going to take 20 ward bosses. These are the larger meeple type, and you'll also take 3 slander tokens, which are the grey speech bubble type tokens, right? So this game is an area control game, and it consists of 2 phases. The first phase is the castle garden phase, and what you'll do, you'll reach into the draw bag and you'll pick out a number of cubes equal to the number of players plus 2. Easy, even for you stupid twats. These cubes go in the castle garden space, and this leads us on to the second thing you're going to do, is you're going to take some actions. There's 2 types of actions you can do. You can do the campaign action, or you can do the settle action. If you're going to do the campaign action, you can place 2 ward bosses in any 2 wards. When you place a ward boss, it has to be placed in an active ward. If there's no immigrant cubes in a ward, it's considered inactive, and therefore you can't put a ward boss in there. But why would you? It'd be a stupid thing to do anyway, wouldn't it? And then once you've placed your ward boss in any active ward, you'll be able to choose a cube from the castle garden space, and you'll be able to chuck it in any active ward on the map. And you've got to remember that you don't have to have a ward boss in that space where you're chucking the immigrant cube, right? Once you've done the settle action, then you'll take a political favour token that is the same as the immigrant that you dumped into that ward, right? There's a couple of extra subsidiary actions that you can do, but these can only be taken after the first term, after the first election, right? So bear that in mind. The first thing you can do is you can use a slander token. You can give up one of your slander tokens that's worth points at the end of the game, and you can slander an opponent. You've got to choose an active ward where you've got a ward boss, and you'll spend a political favour that matches at least 1 cube that's in an adjacent territory, that matches a population cube in that ward, and that will allow you to throw out an opposing ward boss in an adjacent space. And not only that, you can also do this again, so you can go to another adjacent ward, and then you can spend another 2 political favours to do that again, right? So this is a really handy way of getting rid of your opponent's influence in adjacent wards, right? So the next optional action you can do is you can use one of the city benefits. You'll get one of these at the end of each round, and they give you a specific benefit. If you become the mayor, it's just going to give you 3 victory points. But there's several other office benefits that you can be given by one of the opposing players. You might have the council president, and this means up to 2 times per turn you may place a council president token on any ward that does not already have one. And once the token is placed, there's basically going to be a lockdown in this ward. It means that no one can go in and no one can go out. You might end up with the deputy mayor, in which case each turn you'll gain 1 political favour of any colour. Or you might have the precinct chairman. He gives you the resettle action. Each turn you may move 1 immigrant cube from any ward with at least 2 cubes to an adjacent ward with at least 1 cube. So these office benefits are quite powerful. It's quite agonising when you actually become the mayor because you're the one who is going to be distributing these. So it's quite an agonising choice, knowing that you're giving your opponents some really nice benefits, right? So once each player has taken a turn, then it will be the end of the year, and this is when an election will happen. Elections will happen at various points throughout the game, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to clear Castle Garden of any immigrants that hasn't been placed, right? Then you'll hold a ward election. You'll go through each active ward in turn, following the arrows around. Don't worry about the numbers on the walls, but you follow the arrows all the way around. And then each player that has at least one ward boss in that ward will be able to bid a certain number of political favour tokens to try and win the election. Everyone will take a number of these favour tokens in their hand, and you'll do rock, paper, scissors, blah, blah, blah. Everyone will reveal, and then you'll tot up the amount of ward bosses you got in that ward, and then the amount of favour tokens, and the majority will win. If there's a tie, no winner is declared. All ward bosses are removed from the ward. So if you win the election, then all the ward bosses except one from the winning bidder will get removed, right? So once you've carried out the election, you'll go to the phase of naming the immigrant leaders. So starting with the Irish population, each player will then count the number of Irish people that they've got in all the wards that they won, and the majority will then gain 3 Irish influence tokens. And then you'll go to the English, and then you'll go to the Germans, and then you'll go to the Italians. You do the same thing, right? So it's a good way of building up your influence tokens for the next round. Next thing you'll do, the final thing that you'll do, is you'll get 1 point for each ward that you won. The player who won the most wards will then be granted the title of the mayor, and they'll get 3 victory points. The mayor will also, like we said before, will then gift 1 office benefit to each of the other players, right? Once you get to the end of the term, you've done the election, then you'll populate zone 2, then you'll populate zone 3, and then you'll have the final election. Once you've completed the final election, then you will tot up and do a bit of final scoring. Each immigrant population will gain 2 victory points to the player who has the most unspent political favours of that population. This isn't referring to the number of cubes that's on the board. This is just referring to, say, like the Irish, the English, or the Germans or Italians, you know, not the actual cubes that you've got on the board. And then each unused slander token is worth 1 victory point. It's probably better to use it, isn't it? But yeah, it's worth 1 victory point. And the player with the most victory points will then be the winner of Tammany Hall. So what do we like about Tammany Hall? So the first thing that we like about Tammany Hall is the way that the map increases in size the further into the game you get. At the start, you're just going to have zone 1, which consists of a couple of wards. You do get a benefit if you take over wards in zone 1. You get like a free population token, or maybe a free immigrant cube to dump somewhere. But as you progress further into the game, the map opens up, meaning that you've got a choice of whether to double down on the investments that you've made in zone 1, or do you branch out and spread your influence more thinly but in more locations, right? That's a really good choice to make, because you don't know what immigrants are going to be arriving in Castle Garden for you to distribute into the new zones, do you? So that leads us on to the second point that we like about Tammany Hall, is that there is a really clever mix of public and private information. Like we said, when you set the game up, you're going to be sticking some immigrant cubes on the side of the board, and these are going to be populating the new areas first, right? You're going to be taking a certain amount of cubes off and populating areas. But then also, to counter that knowledge that you've already got, you've got the random element of picking the immigrant cubes out of the bag. So you've got a nice balance between public and private information that you've got to basically gamble on. Are you just going to double down on like English political influence, knowing that there's going to be a decent amount of English population going out? Or are you going to wait and see what the bag is going to give you and then make a decision from there? So yeah, we really like the fact that there's a really good balance between public and private information in this game, right? So the final thing that we like about Tammany Hall is the slander tokens add just enough take that into what otherwise wouldn't be that much of a backstabby game. The fact that you get rewarded for not using them means there's also another choice there between kicking out some ward bosses, hoping that they're not going to get repopulated when your opponent's turn comes around, or do you hold on to the slander tokens in the hope that they're going to just edge you past your opponent in the end? Because all the games we played this have been nail-bitingly tense towards the end. They've been very, very close. It's another clever gamble when you decide to use the slander tokens, if at all. So what don't we like about Tammany Hall? So the first thing that we don't like about Tammany Hall, and this is more of a nitpick more than anything, it's to do with the fact that the political favour tokens are single-sided, right? I'm pretty sure that the first printing of this, the original printing, there wasn't any kind of design or stickers or printing on these tokens at all, but they've only printed them on one side, which sort of defeats the object, really. I mean, what with my OCD obsession, I find myself getting annoyed and having to spend time flipping these over to the side with the crest on, right? So it really does get inside my skull, and you'll probably be all right if you're not a lunatic like me, but probably most of you are, so just be aware of that when you dive into this one. So the second thing that we don't like about Tammany Hall is it's kind of difficult to make sense of what's going on towards the back end of the game. This game spreads out so far and so wide that it's incredibly difficult to calculate all the different permutations of who's doing what and where, stopping your brain from spiralling into a quagmire of confusion, right? This issue gets worse the higher the player count. If you're playing with 3 players, it is sort of manageable, but when you get up into the realms of 5 players, then there's going to be so much competition for places. You're going to have to sort of calculate how many ward bosses you got, whether or not people can come in and dump you out with a slander token. It seems to us that each time you place a cube down or you place a ward boss down, you are in fact more often than not gambling upon the success of that placement, not really knowing whether it's going to have any effect, right? So that can be a little bit of a problem if you're not adept at keeping an eye on a lot of moving parts at the same time, right? So the final thing that we don't like about Tammany Hall is that this isn't a game that is going to impress cubophobes, right? You know who you are, the people that can't stand the traditional dry Euros from the 90s all the way through to the mid-2000s. You know, the El Grande, Kalis style games. This isn't going to impress you at all, because essentially that's all it is. It's just shoving cubes around a map, trying to position bits of wood into the best location possible at the most opportune moment, right? And I suppose if you really do have to find criticism in this game, it does sort of feel like a relic from a bygone era now. Even say 5 to 10 years ago, this might have been considered modern, but now things have moved on so much. There's so much plastic in games, there's so many different types of mechanisms, but it's safe to say that if you've moved on from that genre of Euro games, this is not going to be on your birthday wish list. So to summarise, is Tammany Hall worth your bother today and in the future? So we're going to say yes, absolutely. This is without doubt one of our favourite area control games that we've played in a very long time. It's a superb area control game that delivers a sense of nail-biting tension as the game develops round by round. It can suffer from a case of fuck it, let's just see what happens at the end of the game. But all in all, this is worth your serious attention if you are a fan of these dry Euro cube pushing affairs. And we are a fan of both of those types of games. We love dry Euros and we love pushing cubes around. So for us, this is a fantastic area control game. And if you like those types of games, we wholeheartedly recommend Tammany Hall for you. So there you go, that's Tammany Hall. Remember, if you are new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment in that section down below, and we'll see you next Tuesday.